My name is Jackie Oates and I'm a fiddle player and singer of traditional songs and ballads, and I have a third album, Hyperboreans, coming out this September. This album's slightly different from my first two albums as there's 11 tracks and it's a little bit more concise and a bit more polished, and I've got drums and bass on there for the first time and generally less musicians. It's more of a consistent sound, and whereas my first two albums were quite biographical and they were my back catalogue of songs that I'd been singing around for years. The album features a song by my favourite singer-songwriter Alistair Roberts, who's quite a good friend of mine, so I was very lucky that he came down to Devon for about 4 days and recorded with me, and we went to various places and had a lovely time. Working with my brother was quite an odd experience. It was very much like being a teenager again and back living with my mum and dad. But it was a nice experience, and he's quite blunt with me because we're related, so it meant that he nagged and nagged until I'd got my best possible vocal. I was very fortunate at the beginning of this year to win 2 BBC Folk Awards, one for Best Traditional Track for a song called Lark in the Morning, which was on my second album, and Horizon Award, which is the Best Newcomer type award. Winning the awards was a fantastic experience for me, very, very exciting. I didn't really enjoy receiving the awards because I had to make a speech and I'm not very good at public speaking, so when I was given my second award I just went up on stage and apologised and ran off as fast as I could, and I spent a lot of the rest of the evening feeling a bit silly, but nevertheless it was wonderful. That night I got to meet Barbara Dixon, who's someone I've been listening to since I was a toddler. It was brilliant, and I met Ade Edmondson and Judy Collins and James Taylor and Nick Jones, who's another hero of mine. It's fantastic. I've got my first band tour coming up this October, and I'm going to be joined by my musical partner James Dumbleton, who plays guitar and mandolin and all sorts of other weird and wonderful instruments, and an accordion player called Mike Cosgrave, who is in one of my favourite bands, Shinee, and a double bass player called James Budden. So exciting times are ahead, and we're going to various venues around the UK, in particular the Early Music Centre, National Centre for Early Music in York, which I'm particularly excited about because we're being supported by a duo called Katrina Gilmore and Jamie Roberts, who are brilliant. I've got a fairly wide range of musical tastes, but I've been brought up with folk music all of my life, and my family had a very extensive record collection, so I was always listening to ballad singers and unaccompanied singers, and singers such as Dick Gaughan and June Tabor, and I'm very lucky that where I live there's lots and lots of sing-arounds and brilliant singers such as Sean O'Shea and Barry Lister, who teach me a lot of their repertoire. My album's called Hyperboreans, which is named after the title track of the album, which was written for me by Alistair. Hyperboreans are a mythical race of people that have fascinated writers and artists for centuries. And the album is a collection of songs that move me in some way. So I've got some really up-tempo, enriching, enlivening songs, and I've got some very moving songs which I found quite difficult to record because they're so emotive. Past Caring is my current favourite song and possibly the most miserable song I've heard, and I find it quite harrowing to sing when I'm doing gigs because it's so emotional and so real and moving. It's based on a poem by Henry Lawson, who is an Australian writer around the turn of the century, and it's all about how difficult life was for Australian women living in the outback around that time. But it's one of those songs that relates to all walks of life and it's timeless, could be written about now. The third album's coming out on a label called Unearthed, which is an offshoot of a record label called One Little Indian. My previous two albums were with Phil Beer on the Chudley Roots label, but with this album we wanted to make a little bit of a departure from that. I feel very humbled to be on the same label as artists such as Bjork and Paul McCartney.
Now we're